The Cherry Tree. Read and enjoy. Let us read the story of a boy and his grandfather who plant a cherry tree and take care of it. One day, when Rahul was 6, he walked at the Mussoorie bazaar eating cherries. They were a little sweet, a little sour, small, bright red cherries that had come all the way from the Kashmir Valley. Here in the Himalayan foothills where Rahul lived, there were not many fruit trees. The soil was stony, and the dry cold wind stunted the growth of most plants. But on the more sheltered slopes there were forests of oak and deodar. Rahul lived with his grandfather on the outskirts of Mussoorie, just where the forest began. Grandfather was a retired forest ranger. He had a little cottage outside the town. Rahul was on his way to home from school when he bought the cherries. He paid 50 paisa for the bunch. It took him about half an hour to walk home, and by the time he reached the cottage, there were only 3 cherries left. "Have a cherry, grandfather," he said, as soon as he saw grandfather in the garden. Grandfather took 1 cherry and Rahul promptly ate the other 2. He kept the last seed in his mouth for some time, rolling it round and round on his tongue until all the tang had gone. Then he placed the seed on the palm of his hand and studied it. "Are cherry seeds lucky?" asked Rahul. "Of course," said grandfather. "Nothing is lucky if you put it away. If you want luck, you must put it to some use." "What can I do with the seed?" asked Rahul. "Plant it," replied grandfather. So Rahul found a small spade and began to dig up a flower bed. "Hey, not there," said grandfather. "I've sown mustard seeds in that bed. Plant it in that shady corner, where it won't be disturbed." Rahul went to a corner of the garden where the earth was soft and yielding. He did not have to dig. He pressed the seed into the soil with his thumb and it went right in. Then he had his lunch and ran off to play cricket with his friends and forgot all about the cherry seed. When it was winter in the hills, a cold wind blew down from the snows and went woo-woo-woo in the deodar trees, and the garden was dry and bare. In the evenings grandfather and Rahul sat over a charcoal fire, and grandfather told Rahul stories about people who turned into animals and ghosts who lived in trees, and beans that jumped, and stones that wept, and in turn Rahul would read news to him from the newspaper, as grandfather's eyesight being rather weak. Rahul found the newspaper very dull, especially after the stories, but grandfather wanted all the news. They knew it was spring when the wild duck flew north again, to Siberia. Early in the morning, when he got up to chop wood and light a fire, Rahul saw the V-shaped formation streaming northwards and heard the calls of birds clearly through the thin mountain air. One morning in the garden he bent to pick up what he thought was a small twig and found to his surprise that it was well rooted. He stared at it for a moment, then ran to fetch grandfather, calling, "Dada, come and look, the cherry tree has come up." "What cherry tree?" asked grandfather, who had forgotten about it. "The seed we planted last year. Look, it's come up," said Rahul. Rahul went down on his haunches, while grandfather bent almost double and peered down at the tiny tree.